From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I'm Carla Gonzalez. Our top story, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries is meeting in Austria with non-producing countries led by Russia to decide on reduction of parameters deemed necessary to control the falling price of oil. But Iran has said that it won't commit to a cut in oil production unless U.S. imposed sanctions on the country are removed. Iran, Venezuela and Libya are likely to get exemptions from any output cut. The Iranian petroleum minister went on to criticize the U.S. presence in Vienna and questioned the motives of the U.S. government representative, Brian Hook.
Brian Hook I don't know what he is doing in Vienna. If United States is here to submit his proposal to join OPEC, putting pressure on some OPEC members to how to decide. It's very bad for OPEC. It's unacceptable for OPEC and major member of OPEC. No doubt that they are going to create difficulty for our revenue, for our export. Resisting, it's clear, and it's not a simple issue for us to accept it and to go along with it. We are resisting, we are trying to preserve the level of our production and especially the level of our export.
The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin signed several agreements in Moscow on Thursday. The two are reinforcing petroleum agreements and have guaranteed investments of more than $5 billion to raise production between their oil companies, PDVSA and Rosneft, through joint ventures. They also agreed to guarantee investment of more than $1 billion in mining. Venezuela will also be importing more than 600,000 tons of wheat from Russia.
We are guaranteeing an investment of $1 billion for mining production, particularly in gold. We have also signed a contract to guarantee all of the wheat for Venezuela, 600,000 tons of wheat for the Venezuelan people's bread. We have secured the wheat supply for 2019 and beyond.
Our correspondent in Russia, Hansel Oro, has more.
During this day, important agreements related to growth and development have been signed between Venezuela and Russia. Maduro said they are focused mainly in energetic, minery, agro-industrial, satellite and also technical military sectors. In 2019's first trimester, this Intergovernmental Commission aims to keep on working in this bilateral agenda, also to look for new agreements related to agro-industries. Russia will suministrate 600,000 tons of wheat to Venezuela, and on energy regards, they talked about $5 billion, and for minery, an approximate of $1 billion, especially to extract gold and diamonds. Maduro has emphasized the need of a balanced economic system where not only dollar works, but also other currencies to circulate for this multipolar world. To build up this kind of world is one of the aims of this visit. Since this alliance with the Russian Federation, Putin condemned the external oppression, force and terrorist acts against Venezuela. And also he supports political dialogue that respects differences and above all, the respect to people's autodetermination and sovereignty.
Hansel Oro from Moscow. Prosecutors in Brazil say leading global oil traders were deeply involved in a corruption scheme at the state oil company Petrobras. The prosecutors say they paid more than $30 million in bribes to employees between 2011 and 2014. They say the top executives of Vitol, Trafigura and Glencore were fully aware of the bribes, which may be continuing. The Brazilian Federal Police have alerted Interpol.
Glencore, Vitol, and Trafigura are three giant companies with revenue higher than Petrobras. that practice crimes in more than 160 trade operations, with more than 30 million in bribes. This shows that the investigations, in their initial phase, are only revealing the tip of the iceberg.
And we continue with our special reports on the Cuban doctors who worked in Brazil. We bring you now the story of Dr. Berlices Labrada Guevara, who was in charge of 5 communities in the small town of Prado in the northeast of Brazil.
The village of Abril is one of the oldest in the Brazilian state of Bahia, and it was one of 5 communities that Cuban Dr. Berlices Labrada Guevara served for over 2 years. During her time, she changed people's lives in more ways than one.
She decreased the amount of medicine we took and changed our eating habits. We no longer consume sugary soft drinks or buy processed food like we did before.
Now it's for these campesinos to say goodbye to Dr. Guevara.
She was really a person who was dedicated to help people, to cure the human. There are doctors who only think of money, who run clinics, but have no real commitment to serve people.
She didn't have patience. We were her friends. All of her patients are very sad that she is leaving. Some even got sick when they heard.
Now we arrive to the beautiful La Playa de la Pasión, another hard-to-reach community. It's home to people like Maria Elena, who has seen many doctors, but none of them were able to diagnose her symptoms. But that all changed when she saw Dr. Guevara, who identified that she had kidney problems.
I came to consult with her, and she prescribed me a medicine that would improve my condition. And now that I take it, thank God I don't have problems anymore. I took some medical tests and showed them to her, and she said I'm now healthy. She's the best doctor La Playa de la Pasión has ever had.
In a makeshift clinic on the beach, the Cuban doctor went to great lengths to apply all the medical knowledge she learned in her home country.
It was like having a private doctor. She provided very personalized consultations. That's the difference. She always paid special attention to her patients.
More than 8,500 Cuban doctors have left Brazil after the country's president-elect Jair Bolsonaro criticized the More Doctors program. But all these medical professionals will be certified for the work they've done.
I know it's over. The More Doctors program has ended for Cubans in Brazil. But our work here will be a part of history. What we did here will be in the history books, and we won't be forgotten.
Dr. Guevara bid a final heartfelt farewell to all the people that were more than just patients to her. She will now go back to Cuba to begin a new mission to help people in need.
More stories coming up. We'll be back.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice. The American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Colombian students held more mass protests on Thursday over the lack of funding for universities. The police fired tear gas at demonstrators in Bogotá. Trade unions, teachers, and indigenous movements joined students on the streets. They have held a series of protests in recent weeks against budget cuts and tax reforms announced by the government of President Iván Duque. Many of those actions have been met with police repression.
Basically, we lack funds, which is paramount to be able to run the universities. They should invest in science, in education.
In this country, there is enough money. If the war funds were diverted to education and health, Colombia would be a rich country. It would be a very equal society, very fair, but they do not do it because they steal everything.
Our correspondent Jose Manuel Jimenez has the details.
We are here at the National Square in the center of Bogota. This is one of the places where students have gathered and also met with different trade unions. Student-led strikes have been going on for almost 2 months by now. They've been calling on Iván Duque's government to solve issues around education financing for this year and raise the budget for the next year. They are essentially demanding the complete restructuring of policies on financing public higher education. There are 32 public higher education institutions in the country. They are also discussing higher education opportunities for students from lower-income families. Since the beginning of November, there are about 12 negotiations have been held between students and the government. However, despite these meetings, the government continues to state there are no funds available. The students have suggested various proposals to overcome the university's financial difficulties and also to improve their infrastructure. Students say these universities are literally falling apart, and the government negligence is not justified. These public universities, they say, could easily become the future of the country if the government will be willing to invest in them more. The student protesters have also condemned that the President Iván Duque has not even once sit down for talks with them directly over the last 2 months.
Jose Manuel Jimenez, our correspondent in Colombia. And related to this, Colombia's Congress announced the opening of a preliminary investigation against Attorney General Néstor Humberto Martínez. He has been at the center of controversy for 2 weeks over his involvement in the Odebrecht corruption scandal and the allegations in this case. A key witness, who is now deceased, presented audio recordings which incriminated the top prosecutor. A commission will investigate if the prosecutor committed the crime of omission. The government of Mauricio Macri has approved yet another blow to Argentinians. The Congress has approved a personal property tax reform. The bill was passed in the lower house with 125 votes in favor, 65 against, and 27 abstentions. The tax initiative will have a direct impact on middle-class property owners who will now be paying higher taxes. At the same time, lawmakers who are opposed to the reform argue that it's the rich who stand to benefit.
The measure will also see increased property tax rates on farmlands. This tax reform is not going to benefit the middle class. They will just be forced to endure extremely high taxes hikes, and they already have to dig deep into their pockets to meet their other expenses, such as their children's school fees. And let's not forget high food prices and high cost of living. These neoliberal policies. This is what is actually producing.
A recent study conducted by Chile's central bank has shown that immigrants in general tend to have a higher level of education than Chileans. As a result, they have a positive impact on the country's workforce. The report examines the structural changes in the labor market in recent years. It found that the immigrants' levels of education is somewhat greater than that of the local population. The government data also shows that there are currently over 1 million immigrants in Chile, primarily from Venezuela, Peru, Haiti, and Colombia. But it says that they are still earning considerably lower wages. For some rappers, violence is part of life and often unavoidable. But for one Honduran migrant, he wants nothing to do with it, but a shot at a better life in the U.S. He now finds himself stranded at the Mexican border. Christian Sanchez is 22 years old and escaped drugs, gangs, poverty, and violence on foot with nothing but clothes on his back. He's spoken of finding work in the United States and having a family.
I was in pain from the hunger, from the lack of opportunities. I have dreams just like everyone else in any other country. I want to have a family, a house, a car. These are dreams, things that I can never have in Honduras.
Now to Ecuador, where President Lenin Moreno has spoken once again on Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, who has been in London's Ecuadorian embassy for 6 years. Our correspondent Denise Herrera tells us more.
Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno has talked again about the situation of the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. He said that, "I do not like the presence of Mr. Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy, but we have been respectful of his human rights, and with that respect in mind, we think that 6 years is too long for someone to remain nearly incarcerated in an embassy." Moreno also said that if the British government guarantees that Julian Assange will not be extradited to a third country, Julian Assange should hand himself to the authorities. Moreno also said that according to the British government, they will never extradite a person to a country where his life is at risk. However, the legal defense team of Julian Assange rejected this statement. So we will see Moreno take action about this supposed deal between the British government and the Ecuadorian government. It's all for now. Back to you at the studios.
That was Denise Herrera from Quito. We'll follow that topic as well. The NGO Life on another topic, Life in Leggings, a Caribbean alliance against gender-based violence, began as a hashtag which women around the world use to share their stories about harassment. Leggings, since a wide cross-section of women wear leggings and harassment does not care about class or what you are actually wearing. And since we're still observing the UN's 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we want to take our time to highlight the experiences of Caribbean women, since the region is one of the most violent in the world for women and girls, according to the UN. And this hashtag led to Ronelle King creating an NGO with the same name, since she says there's so much work to be done.
Right, so the NGO is still relatively new. We've expanded into the region. We've started tracking femicides in the Caribbean region. We've started as well as releasing regional call to actions, looking for missing girls, because we realize, especially in the region, there's a hypersexualization of especially Black girls, where they go missing and persons don't really take it as seriously as they should.
And Ronelle King also spoke about what should Caribbean governments do as a policy to stem the high rates of gender-based violence.
Well, they should be listening to the women, listening to the organizations on the ground that work with these women, because your country cannot be sustainable. It cannot go forward if half the gender is held back. If we have to deal with these issues, it means that we're not living to our full potential. We're not feeling safe in our countries. We're not able to, contribute as much as we would like to, and live full lives, most importantly.
And in other news, the president of the Peruvian Football Federation has appeared in court in Lima in connection with bribery involving a former Supreme Court judge. Edwin Oviedo arrived at the court to a media frenzy and was rushed in by security. He's accused of giving a former judge, Cesarino Stroza, cash and World Cup tickets in return for a court-ordered exclusion from a murder investigation. According to prosecutor Jorge Chavez, he was arrested for being part of a criminal organization made up of the country's elite to infiltrate the justice system. The prosecutor in the murder investigation has asked the court that he be arrested for up to 2 years to ensure his cooperation in the case. No decision has yet been made. We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
And we're back. Protests against President Emmanuel Macron have continued to spread across France. Late on Thursday, police in the city of Toulouse clashed with over 1,000 protesters who were marching against proposed education reforms. Over 200 high schools across France were blocked by students who were angry at the reforms that seek to change many aspects of the education system. These include the criteria for admission into public universities. Meanwhile, most tourist sites across the country are to close on Saturday over fears of protests expected on that day. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe said that 89,000 police officers will be deployed on Saturday and warned residents to stay indoors.
Never since 2005, because we are facing people who are not here to protest, but to smash, and we want to have the means not to give them a free rein. We have mobilized a considerable amount of forces, 8,000 in Paris, which is much more than last Saturday, and in total for France, not 65,000, but 89,000. So it's truly an exceptional mobilization.
Protesters marking the 10th anniversary of the killing of a teenager in Greece clashed with police in the capital Athens. Protesters throwing stones and petrol bombs were met with tear gas and water cannons by the police. Earlier, a demonstration was held in memory of the 15-year-old Alexandros Grigoropoulos, who was shot dead by a police officer in 2008. His killing was followed by weeks of riots. More than 2,000 police officers were reportedly deployed for the demonstration. North Korean Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho has held discussions with his Chinese counterpart, State Councilor Wang Yi, in the Chinese capital, Beijing. Ri arrived in Beijing for a 3-day working visit that aims to cement ties between the two nations. The ministers held discussions around the China-North Korea relations, the situation on the Korean peninsula, among other issues. Cuba's capital of Havana is enjoying its annual December Film Festival, celebrating new Latin American film. Now, in its 40th edition, Cuba has nominated 13 films for the contest, and Telesur spoke with some of the participants, hoping to see their work win a coveted Coral Prize.
These are scenes from Insumisa, the most recent feature film from Cuban director Fernando Perez and Swiss producer Laura Cazador. Insumisa tells the story of a Swiss woman who arrives in the Cuban city of Baracoa in the 19th century dressed as a man and bearing the name Enrique Faber. She practices medicine and marries a local young woman. It's a dramatic tale based on real events.
It's a film that doesn't want just to dwell on themes of gender, but rather wants to portray a much more modern image. A woman who faced a closed-off existence and broke through all the barriers in front of her.
Director Alejandro Gil makes his appearance in this edition of the festival with a historic drama. His proposal is Innocence, the story of the most moving event in 19th century Havana, the execution by firing squad of 8 medical students.
It's a film based on real facts, a film that is telling a real story. So it doesn't matter what you know about history or things that can manipulate you politically to ensure that you don't look any deeper.
Mantis Nest is another Cuban feature film hoping to win a Coral. The film, directed by Arturo Soto, tells the story of a love triangle between 2 men and a woman lasting for more than 40 years. One morning in 1994, all 3 were found dead.
It may look like a thriller and have the structure of a thriller, but at the end it's a story about strong patience. It's getting more difficult to be included in this festival because they are getting more selective every time. To just participate is an honor.
2 animated films are competing in the festival. One of them is A Very Close Encounter by Paul Chaviano, a film which tells fabulous stories from the Cuban countryside with fantastical characters.
It's a stop-motion film in which figures are really moved frame by frame and based on a story paying tribute to the work of Samuel Feijó. It tells the tale of a campesino who doesn't believe anything happening around him, who has close encounters with these deities.
The International Festival of New Latin American Film will end on its 40th edition with some of the best cinema from the region. 20 feature films, 22 shorts and medium-length productions, and a whole lot more that can be enjoyed by cinema lovers.
And with that, we end our news brief, but there's another stories. As you know, you can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And we're on social media as well, so go ahead and follow us. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching Telesur.